Okay, let's create our get method. And get is going to look like this. We're just going to get an item at a particular index. So as we've been going through these methods for doubly linked lists, you may have noticed that some of these are essentially the same as the methods for singly linked lists. The big exception to this point has been pop, and that one's very different in doubly linked lists versus singly linked lists. Get is going to be one of those methods that we write very differently than the way we did in singly linked lists. So let's start out by actually bringing up a singly linked list and walk through the steps that we went through to make this work in a singly linked list. First, we had to make sure our indexes were, in this case, 0, 1, 2, or 3. We couldn't have anything out of range on this end, and we couldn't have anything out of range on this end. So we would say if the index is less than 0 or greater than or equal to the length, then we're going to return none. This is going to be the same in a singly or doubly linked list. So let's bring up our linked list here. And what we did is we set temp equal to head like this, and we'll remove head and tail. And we created a for loop to go until we got to the index. And we would move temp forward by saying temp equals temp.next until we got to the index that we were looking for. And then we would return temp. So this was our code for the get method for a singly linked list. And it just so happens this all works just like this for a doubly linked list. But in a doubly linked list, we can optimize this. So let's bring this up, turn this into a doubly linked list, and look at a couple of scenarios. First, let's return the item at the index of 1. In this situation, we're going to start at the head, and we're going to iterate through until we get to that index, and then we can return that node. But if we're looking for the node at the index of 2, it would be more efficient to start at the tail and go the other way. It's closer to tail than it is to the head. So if we're going to optimize this for a doubly linked list, there are some changes that we need to make. So let's bring our code back and make our changes to this code. So you only want to do this for loop here if the item you're looking for is in the first half of the list. So we're going to say if the index is less than self.length divided by 2, in other words, it's in the first half of the list, only then do we run this for loop. So if it's not in the first half of the list, it's in the second half, obviously. So we'll say else. And let's shrink this down a little bit here so we have more room. And the first thing we need to do here is set temp equal to the tail. In other words, temp was here, but in this situation, we need to start here and move backwards through our doubly linked list. Then we need to create a for loop that's going to start at this point and go backwards. And we do that like this. So what we saw in the other for loop is we just passed it an index. But what you can also do with a for loop is you can tell it the number where you would like to start. In this case, the length minus 1, in other words, the index of 3. Normally, when you have a for loop, you just want it to increment by 1 every time you loop through. In this case, we can tell it to decrement by 1 every time we loop through. And as we do, we'll say temp equals temp.previous, which is going to move that to the left. And once we get done running through our for loop, we'll return temp, which will return that node that we're looking for. So let's look at this with the rest of our code. We'll look at this in a moment in VS Code. We'll create this doubly linked list, and we'll run the get method at the index of 1, which will return the value of 1. And then we'll run it again at the index of 2, which should return the value of 2. but this is going to test to make sure that our code is working that goes backwards through our doubly linked list. All right, so let's flip over to VS Code. So there's our get method there. And this is going to create our doubly linked lists with 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll print this. And there is our linked list with 0, 1, 2, and 3. All right, so I'm going to scroll up here. And I'm going to replace this print list down here. And then we're going to get the item at the index of 1, and we're going to get the item at the index of 2. And I'm going to go ahead and change this to dot value before we run this. Of course, we're going to change this back when we're done testing this. And I'll run this. And you can see up here that we have returned 1 and 2. So I'll remove the dot value up here. And that is our method for get.